Sure. I'll pray. Our Lord in heaven, we thank you for your Sabbath. We thank you for bringing us here. Thank you for the teaching that we had so far, and help us meditate to understand it. Please help us in the next study and be with us until the end of Sabbath. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So we're doing the South Sudan. Can you guys see?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I prepared the equality about South Sudan. Now let me make it smaller. I think I was interested in this just because of elder tests and the issues that were there. So this is Africa, and this is where South Sudan is. This is the flag. The religion in South Sudan by the 2012 Pew Research on Religion was 60% Christianity, 32% traditional African religion, 6.2% Islam, and 0.4% other. There are conflicting reports as to the religious beliefs in South Sudan, though all agree that the three main religions are traditional African religions, Christianity, and Islam. The South Sudanese President Kiir, a Roman Catholic, while speaking at St. Teresa Cathedral in Juba, Juba is the capital, South Sudan, stated that South Sudan would be a nation which respects freedom of religion. Christians, primarily Roman Catholics, Anglican and Presbyterian, account for about 3/5 of South Sudan's population. Christianity is a result of European missionary efforts that began in the second half of the 19th century. The remainder of the population is a mix of Muslims and those who follow traditional animist religions, the latter outnumbering the former. Although the animists share some common elements of religious belief, each ethnic group has its own indigenous religion. Virtually all of South Sudan's traditional African religions share the conception of a high spirit or divinity, usually a creator god. There exist two conceptions of the universe: the earthly and the heavenly, or the visible and the invisible. The heavenly world is seen as being populated by spiritual beings whose function is to serve as intermediaries or messengers of God. In the case of the Nilotic people, these spirits are identified with their ancestors. The supreme deity is the object of ritual using music and dance. And these are some pictures from South Sudan. They are located along the Nile River. These are the houses. South Sudan was the least urbanized area when Sudan became independent in 1956, but has since experienced a high rate of urban growth. Still, only about 1/5 of the population is urban. Major towns include Wau, Malakal, Yei, Yambio, and Juba, the capital. So this is another city. It's all around the river. The population of South Sudan is overwhelmingly young, with more than 2/5 of the population under the age of 15 and more than 1/4 between the ages of 15 and 29. Life expectancy is much lower than the world average and is lower than that of neighboring countries. Decades of civil war in Sudan, fought largely in what is now South Sudan, took a toll on the population. It was estimated that between 1983, when a census was taken, and 2005, when the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, or what they call CPA, was signed, more than 2 million people died and some 4 to 5.5 million were displaced, many of whom were Southern Sudanese. After the signing of the CPA, many Southern Sudanese returned to the region, especially during the run-up to the 2011 referendum on Southern independence, when more than 120,000 made their way back to the South. South Sudan hosts refugees from Sudan's Darfur region, as well as from other countries, including the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, and Ethiopia. South Sudan is among the poorest and least developed countries in the world. Almost 4/5 of its inhabitants depend on farming or animal husbandry for their livelihoods. The civil war that began in late 2013 severely disrupted the economy of South Sudan. Women in South Sudan are women who live in and are from South Sudan. Since the independence of South Sudan on 9 July 2011, these women have gained more power, but still face issues of inequality. Many women in this area do not have adequate access to health resources and education. While these women often face inequality, there has been progress in South Sudan's official declaration of independence. In recent years, this inequality has gained national attention, and people have become more interested in the issue of child marriage that this area faces. Along with this, there has started to be a focus on the very high level of maternal mortality in South Sudan. So the maternal mortality is 789 deaths per 100,000 live births, which is really very high, and we're going to see why. Currently, the total population in South Sudan is 12,919,000. In recent years, the population of males has surpassed the population of females. In 2018, the population of female was 6,444,000, and the population of male was 646,474,000. Women in South Sudan make up around 42% of the country's total population. They are a smaller population when compared to the male population. Throughout South Sudan, many women lack the ability and opportunity for education and health resources. According to the World Bank, 51% of the population in South Sudan is living under the poverty line. In turn, many women in South Sudan are not provided the opportunity to go to school, so they can stay at home and help their families, and as a result are illiterate. Steps have been taken to allow more children to go to school, such as South Sudan Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, creating an education system for girls. While the steps are taken by the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology have created an increase in school attendance, there are still a number of children, especially girls, who are unable to attend school due to their families' inability to send them. According to the 2006 Household Health Survey, 46% of women with no education are married before age 18. Many of these women are married off rather than attending school and becoming educated. Illiteracy and limited education also tie into women in South Sudan's inability to protect themselves from sexually transmitted infections. Only 3% of women without formal education and 2% of women from the poorest area use a form of contraception compared to the 22% of the wealthiest area. The lack of education of women in this area ties directly into their health. Less than half of the women in South Sudan have heard of HIV/AIDS, and well over 50% of women are unaware of ways to prevent the disease. Also, many women and girls have to drop out of the school to be married and are therefore not given the opportunity to learn. According to the 2006 Sudan Household Survey, a mother's level of education plays a role on the child's weight. 35% of children from mothers with no formal education were underweight, whereas only 19% of children from mothers with secondary level education were underweight. The survey also found that on average, 14% of children in South Sudan are severely underweight. The mean percent of children from South Sudan who are severely stunted is 18%. Forced marriage and child marriages are very common from women in South Sudan and affect most women in the area. Child marriages are often used as a way for families to recover lost economic resources. Because a woman's family receives a dowry from the husband of their daughter, parents are interested in having their daughters married off at a very early age to whoever offers the most. This dowry is also the reason for why so few women get divorced in South Sudan. If there is a divorce, the family of the wife has to repay the family of the husband the dowry that was originally given for the marriage. Another reason for marrying daughters young is the fear of pregnancy out of wedlock. This causes dishonor for the family, and as a result, the hope is to marry a daughter before she has this chance. While there are laws that prevent child marriages, the government does little to enforce them, so people often do not abide by them. The belief in this culture is that men control family and political power, and women are meant to follow their orders. A woman's role is to give her husband children, and these women face pressure from their husband's family members to bear as many children as possible. Pregnancies from child marriages also result in more birth complications than marriages with other women. Many women in South Sudan lack the resources and medical care that they need during their pregnancy. So if there are complications, the woman may not be saved. As a result, South Sudan has one of the highest maternal death rates following and during pregnancy, with a ratio of 789 deaths per 100-time live births. Because of the lack of contraception use and the fact that women are expected to have as many children as possible, this number does not waver much. A major complication faced by women in South Sudan is obstetric fistula. So obstetric fistula is a medical condition in which a hole develops in the birth canal as a result of childbirth. This can be between the vagina rectum or vagina and ureter or bladder. It can result in incontinence of urine or feces. Complications might include depression, infertility, and social isolation. Approximately 5,000 women in South Sudan have obstetric fistula every year. Fistula is most common in areas where there are no medical resources. This often results in the loss of the child, as well as the rejection of the womb by her husband and others. Since South Sudan's official declaration of independence on 9 July 2011, 5 out of 29 ministerial positions in the government of South Sudan have been occupied by South Sudanese women. 10 out of 28 deputies ministers were held by women. The women of the Republic of South Sudan had also been active in liberation causes by providing food and shelters to soldiers and by caring for children and by caring for wounded heroes and heroines during their political struggle prior to the country's independence. An example was their formation of the Katiba Banat Women Battalion. Although women's rights and gender equality is legally guaranteed, South Sudan is a highly unequal society. A great disparity among the genders is their level of education. The literacy rate for women is 16%, while the rate for men is 40%. Moreover, the majority of women never receive an education. In a study of 490 people, it was recorded that 60% of women and 38% of men have never attended school. The leading cause for girls not to go to school is early marriage, while for boys, it is the high cost of school fees. In 2013, about 45% of girls were married before the age of 18. This is mostly due to the fact that when marrying, men are required to pay a bride price to the bride's family. It is very common to receive cows as a bride price. This is an incentive for families to sell their daughters when they are struggling economically. Additionally, married girls report that their menstrual cycle and lack of access to sanitary towels prevent them from attending school. 41% in this study claim they do not have access. Moreover, the long distances to school and lack of self-sanitation facilities can result in abductions, sexual harassment, and other forms of gender-based violence. The disproportionately low number of female teachers is another barrier to girls' education. Less than 10% of teachers here are women, which can decrease the perception of safety in a society where gender-based violence is very high and mostly concentrated toward female and perpetuated by males. Gender-based violence includes rape, sexual assault, domestic violence, murder, torture, war crimes against children, forced marriages, and other forms of sexual violence. Gender-based violence has affected a reported 41% of people in the past year. 70% of people report knowing someone who has been a victim. Since conflict broke out in 2013, about 20% of girls and women have been raped or sexually assaulted, and more than half of the accused perpetrators are uniformed police or soldiers. However, multiple studies show that sexual violence incidents are majorly underreported. Additionally, it is proven that civil unrest increases GBV among all population. From 2016 to 2016, reported incidents of sexual violence increased by 60%. Gender roles. Gender inequality and strict gender roles are maintained by the strict patriarchal social system. This generally marginalizes women out of roles of power and productive wage-paying jobs. Women are expected to take on the role as the caretaker of the household. They bear the role of providing food and sanitized water for the household. They are expected to care for children, the elderly, and the sick. Consequently, the second leading reason girls do not go to school is due to increased care work. Due to the increased displacement of people being affected by the conflict, women are taking on extra caretaking responsibilities since the members of their household have increased. Accordingly, the conflict has increased their reproductive responsibility, which has further limited their access to education, political participation, and other activities. In addition, women are more susceptible to food insecurity and malnutrition, owing to the fact that they are culturally and socially expected to refuse food in order to provide more for the rest of the family. Wow. South Sudan has a relatively high female political participation in comparison to other African countries. Currently, 29% of parliament seats are held by women. However, the number of women in governor and ministry positions are disproportionately very low. Men still hold the vast majority of these more powerful government roles. Consequently, women have little to no decision-making power in the private as well as the public sector. Men and boys are identified as making the most decisions in the household and in their communities. Women will make a decision on behalf of men's absence. Many laws and customary legal practices maintain women's inferiority. This can be seen when comparing adultery laws and implementation. Women are convicted without substantial evidence and may be imprisoned for 8 months to a year. In comparison, men are rarely prosecuted. Additionally, while domestic violence is illegal, it is socially accepted that a man discipline his wife, and they are rarely charged with it as a crime. 82% of women and 81% of men agreed that domestic violence against women should be tolerated in order to keep the family together. In 2017, South Sudan joined the United Nations and signed the Geneva Convention, which transnationally establishes human rights. However, they have not yet ratified and implemented the United Nations Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, an optional clause that more specifically institutes gender equality. Notwithstanding, South Sudan does have additional legal structures in place to promote women's rights. The national gender policy illegally guarantees gender equality and protections. The policy also establishes affirmative actions in order to ensure women political participation. They have several objectives and strategies to enact social, economic, and legal equality for women. The gender-specific clauses are: women shall be accorded full and equal dignity of the person with men. Women shall have the right to equal pay for equal work and other related benefits with men. Women shall have the right to participate equally with men in public life. Additionally, they are bonded to the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa, also known as the Maputo Protocol, which establishes that women's rights are human rights. Each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. Patriarchy is exhausting. Every day feels like and is a battlefield in many ways. Some days I'm strong enough to be at the front line, some days I'm just another fighter. And some days I'm simply too worn out to fight back. In South Sudan, I would say for many things, we are still at the awareness rising level in our journey to organize and reclaim women's human rights to be lived realities. On almost every social issue, especially on women and girls' rights, the wins are small, uncountable, but we celebrate regardless. We celebrate when any perpetrator of sexual and gender-based violence is publicly tried and convicted, even when we know deep down that he will be walking on the streets unbothered a few days later. We celebrate when new laws and policies are passed knowing well that there is no political will to see them through. South Sudanese feminists celebrate these small wins even when we don't fully feel their impacts at the moment, simply because we understand that today's partial wins or losses are foundational blocks for tomorrow's feminist wins. There are moments when the feminist success stories are my motivation by most times. It's the stories of failure that make me wake up, re-energized and fired up enough to find another day. Living a feminist life is the most radical act, and I'm constantly inspired by how young Southern Sudanese girls and women are resisting and actively fighting back against the patriarchy. From the few stories that make it to traditional and digital multimedia platforms, like the story of the 16-year-old Abu Kulwal, who sued her parents for attempting to forcefully marry her off. Pony Helen, who tried to resist child marriage as a result of an unwanted teenage pregnancy at the age of 16. At first failed, but re-strategized after giving birth and eventually found her way out of that marriage. Then there's Kakul and Aquatring, all stories of girls and young women actively fighting back against child and forced marriages in a country where 52% of girls are married off before their 18th birthday. Adriana, can you read some? Not there, okay. On some days, my energy to fight another day is drawn from waking up to stories such as the story of...
I can read. Sorry, I had to get to my mic.
Okay, because my eyes are getting crossed.
Yeah. On some days, my energy to fight another day is drawn from the waking up to stories such as the story of an unarmed Rumbek woman who instantly mobilized, disarmed, and beaten up two soldiers who wanted to gang rape a woman. Watching Aman Bol take to Facebook Live and sharing her divorce and the fight for her children's custody affirms why we must continue. In a country that rewards women for silence and covering up domestic and intimate partner violence, Aman has no idea how many patriarchal barriers she defied by publicly speaking up about what she was going through while it was happening. Just like the story of Aluel Garang, famously known as Aluel Messi, a footballer who decided to return to playing for her club 3 months after childbirth. The decision and action caused public outrage as her husband stormed the football match and violently demanded she get off the pitch. The particular story exposed the violence of misogyny and lack of accountability for women's lives, even when a woman is publicly violated. I stand Aluel Messi for persisting and not backing off in the face of such public humiliation. For girls and young women in South Sudan, going out to have a good time wearing whatever they want, unbothered, speaking out and fighting back misogynist off and online The young women initiating conversations around bride price at their family levels, walking out of abusive marriages, choosing to follow your career, etc., are all radical feminist acts performed every day by girls and young women who don't even necessarily identify as feminist. Sometimes it feels like all the awareness raising, the advocacy, all the ongoing programs on gender, the push for policies and laws on sexual and gender-based violence and other feminist actions are hitting walls with no major impact. But then I look around and see girls and young women claiming their spaces, fighting for their rights in small and big ways, and my heart settles. Yes, the big feminist wins that are often a result of public outrage and pressure often lead to state performative acts of accountability are important. However, there is so much power in the everyday small radical feminist acts of resistance and pushback. This generation of South Sudanese girls and young women is here to take the liberation of women to the next levels, and I am here for it. Stealing and selling children in South Sudan is a money-making business. As young as 10, they are used in army or as slaves. They are sold on the cattle market. Wow.
Yep. What a life. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons in South Sudan face legal challenges not experienced by non-LGBT residents. Male same-sex sexuality activity is illegal and carries a penalty of up to 10 years imprisonment. LGBT persons are regularly prosecuted by the government and additionally face stigmatization among the broader population. Legally, the same-sex sexual activity. South Sudan was formerly part of Sudan and subject to its interpretation of Sharia law, under which homosexual activity was illegal, with punishment ranging from lashes to the death penalty. In 2008, the autonomous government of Southern Sudan adopted its own penal code, which prohibits carnal intercourse against the order of nature and prescribes a sentence of 10 years imprisonment. Same-sex couples have no legal recognition. Same-sex marriages is constitutionally banned since the country adopted its constitution in 2011. In July 2010, Salva Kiir Mayardit, now president of South Sudan, told Radio Netherlands worldwide that homosexuality is not in the character of Southern Sudanese people. It is not even something that anybody can talk about here in Southern Sudan in particular. It is not there, and if anybody wants to import or to export it to Sudan, it will not get the support and it will always be condemned by everybody, he said. In 2006, Abraham Mayom Atian, a bishop in South Sudan, led a split from the Episcopal Church of Sudan for what he regarded as a failure by the church leadership to condemn homosexuality sufficiently strongly. The US Department of State's 2011 Human Rights Report found widespread social discrimination against gay men and lesbians and stated that there were no known LGBT organizations. Racism in Sudan is a complex matter due to the racial mixture of various populations. Sudanese Arabs are among the 600 ethnic groups who live here. And there are elements within Arab Sudanese society that view Black people and Blackness with disfavor. Sudan is dominated by a light-skinned, Arabic-speaking elite, while Black Africans often face oppression and marginalization. Sudan has been in the Arab League since 1956. Skin whitening is relatively common among some Sudanese. The preference for light skin in Sudanese society is rooted in the legacies of slavery and colonialism. Skin color is not the sole determining factor in distinctions between Sudanese Arabs and Sudanese African. The extent that a person has Arab ancestry, speaking the Arabic language, and practicing Islam can be associated with being Arab and non-Black and can determine social status. Sudanese conceptions of race differ from conceptions of race in the Western world. Many dark-skinned Sudanese, such as former President Omar al-Bashir, would be considered Black in a country such as the United States, but are considered non-Black within Sudan. According to the CBS News article published in 1999, slaves have been sold for $50 a piece. In September 2000, the United States Department alleged that the Sudanese government's support of slavery and its continued military action, which has resulted in numerous deaths, are due to, in part, to the victims' religious belief. Jock Maduk, professor of history at Loyola Marymount University, states that the abduction of women and children of the South by North is slavery by any definition. The government of Sudan insists that the whole matter is no more than the traditional tribal feuding over resources. During the Second Sudanese Civil War, people were taken into slavery. Estimates of abduction range from 40,000 to 200,000. Abduction of Dinka women and children was common. The Darfur conflict has been described by some as a racial matter. Unlike the Southern Sudanese, the poor people and primarily Muslims, so the conflict has been argued to be more ethnic rather than religious. Although debates about water and land usage were also a factor. Beginning in 1991, elders of the Zagan people of Sudan complained that they were victims of an intensifying Arab apartheid campaign. Vukoni Lupalazaga has accused the Sudanese government of deftly manipulating Arab solidarity to carry out policies of apartheid and ethnic cleansing against non-Arabs in Darfur. This another person has pointed to the extremely prevalent elite-sponsored colorism in Sudan as an example of a government that deserves the appellation apartheid, and former Canadian Minister of Justice Irwin Cotler has also criticized Sudan in similar terms. So this is all I have.
Mike, I would ask a question for somebody that might know. Dershowitz, at the very bottom of your last paragraph, he's on the side of Trump in all that's going on. I don't know if he still is, but I know that he backed Trump in all that he did. So this statement here, what does this put him as there? Pointed to the extremely prevalent elite-sponsored colorism.
So because they have so many, when they had the civil war and they were displaced from their country and they went in the neighboring countries, when they came back, that's why South Sudan is made of so many ethnic groups. And that's the colorism, I think. I don't know what it would refer.
Definitely women have it bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's like they have no rights. And I was watching some videos. You know how when you put it in words, it sounds so technical and so beautiful, you know, but when you see it in reality, I put some of those pictures, you know, those huts where they live, you know, just made of straw and whatever they can gather. Those women, they gather like under a tree outside on the field, and somebody's coming and teaching them how to read. It's like you see this old women try to learn the alphabet and how to read and see like this. It's really unbelievable how, you know, how they keep them uneducated. But definitely the war and poverty and all this patriarchal tradition play a big role. During the Civil War, the women that were able to get out of the country, and especially the ones that were able to migrate to United States, they were a big part of the change in women's rights in that country because they saw a different life. So,
Sarah, would you like to, because if I understand correctly, you're from that area. Would you like to elaborate on colorism for us? Maybe not. I don't know if you have a device that you can talk.
She's on the chat. Colorism is a result of bleaching.
let's see what you, okay.
So it's just a combination of, because a lot of these African countries, I mean, this is like a trend, or I guess poverty is part of it, maybe some religious, and just traditions passed down, and just not educated. These are all the factors that are making this just, you know, the mindset of it's, is that what you think? It's a combination of many different factors, because this is a lot of the African countries treat women really badly.
Yeah, and definitely, as we've seen every time, every single country that we looked at, education is such a big, important role.
Yes.
But if they're so poor that they cannot even send the boys for education, then it's really difficult.
Right. Yeah, education really is empowering.
Yeah.
It really is. So to educate a child, or educate girls, especially in these third world countries, because oftentimes it's the children that are being educated are the boys and the girls are left behind, you know?
Yeah, she said she can't get unmuted, so, but I put a definition in that I looked up real quick, because I didn't realize when she read that it's related to the bleaching until Sarah put that in the chat. The prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. It has a serious.
Yeah, this was a shock for me too, because you know, I understand the racism here in the United States, or let's say in Europe, but I would not understand racism in Africa. You know, why would you care about people of lighter skin or darker skin or whatever, you know?
It identifies where you're from, right? Maybe Sarah can help us through the chat. It identifies, like, the darker you are, it kind of, does it make you a, I might have it backwards, but they are identifying what region you're from, and so they're separating out based on that. That she can.
I have no idea, but supposedly the lighter skin are of Arabic origin, so I don't know if those people are rich people or what does it mean.
Black skin is considered not beautiful. When you say black skin, do you mean like darker? As opposed,
well, I didn't look at picture.
No, I'm talking about, because Sarah's putting it, I'm kind of watching her in the chat. So black skin's considered not beautiful. Does that mean, are you meaning like a darker, like with different shades? Is that what you mean? And the darker shade? is not considered beautiful?
Maybe she means black at period isn't at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't know that would, I don't know. I don't know how that would make sense when you're in an area where everybody, okay, she says, yeah. Because you're in an area where everybody, in our eyes, we're white, or a lot of us are white, in an area where we're not seeing the distinction of some being darker than the other. That's what I was trying to find out. Okay, so some that are darker.
But a lot of times it's not about the region of the people that's there, because most people there are going to be darker skinned. The issue is that it's the same thing here, and if you look at Korea and Asian countries in the Middle East, the advertisement companies will use people who are lighter skinned, so they set that as the beauty standard, and then everyone else just tries to match that, and they're just trying to make a profit from skin bleaching creams and things like that. So a lot of it comes from the standard that's set by the commercial industry.
Okay,
And a lot of it is also obviously a remnants from slavery and from, colonial powers stating that light skin or white is better. But the advertising agencies, anywhere you go, this is like a really big issue worldwide, because they're the ones that are pushing. You want what you see. What you see becomes the norm. So if all the pictures of pretty people are light skinned, that's what you think it has to be. That's why you have so many self-image issues with women everywhere, all over the world.
okay.
It's such a big issue. That's just my 2 cents. I
So
don't
that's
know
what
for sure,
Sarah's
but I know
referring
for
to.
sure they have these advertisements everywhere.
Yeah, so that's what Sarah's referring to then too, the darker skin is not, how'd she word it, not beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the beauty industry, the cosmetic industry, all those industries, and the remnants of that slavery mindset of people who were, slavers.
yeah,
All just and the patriarchy, because again, men will drive that, what their interests are into there as well, and restrictions for women. So it's just a multitude of things, I bet.
okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, too. Well, we have some time.
There's a article by Al Jazeera. It says, but in South Sudan, the world's youngest country and home to some of the darkest people worldwide, skin whitening is the issue of colorism. So that's what Sarah was saying.
Yeah, yeah,
Commonly defined as prejudice or discrimination against dark-skinned people, is linked to complex history. So it's a complicated. I can put the link for this in the chat. So whoever wants to read it, but I won't take up too much time here.
okay. So let's just close this recording down, and then we have time left to, let me ask, I don't remember last night, I don't think there was nobody else ready with another research and discussion topic? Just to clarify that first.
For everybody that was on the call, nobody spoke up, but we can re-ask the question. Does anybody have a gender presentation ready for today? I'm gonna go with no.
Okay, I'll go with no too. Okay, let me close the recording down.